is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love. You rest in this love. I rest in this love. Good evening and welcome to the grounding experience at Fountain Street Church. I'm the Reverend Matthew Cockram, Minister for Spiritual Care and Practice, and I use he/him pronouns. And I am pleased and tickled and delighted to be joined by my colleague, the Reverend Mariela Perez Simons, Senior Minister for Vision and Innovation. Thank you for helping to create this space and being a part of this.
Thank you for leading it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We are glad that you are here with us tonight for our first grounding experience. Each week we will offer these services in the hopes that whatever and whenever and however you engage them, whether it's live and in real time or with family and friends or alone, that these services will be a blessing and a balm to you, body, mind, and spirit. What do we need in these times? This is the question we've been asking ourselves as part of your ministerial team, along with Reverend Christopher Rowe. What do we need in these times? This is the question that drives our services on Sundays and also drives these grounding experiences. As we enter a new era of ministry and as our world continues to struggle with injustice and corruption, political division and dismantling systems of oppression and patriarchy, what do we need? Well, one answer is we need practice. But not just any kind of practice. We need practice that brings us home. Practice that brings us home to our bodies. And practice that brings us home to our common shared earth. We need practices that center us. Practices that will carry us through elections and eruptions and transitions and trials and fires and pandemics and life. We need practices for our lives. As eco-spiritual activist Joanna Macy once said, whether we are serving as midwives to the death of one world or the birth of another, the work is the same. Practice. So may this time serve as an opportunity for practice. I know it is for me, and I hope it is for you as well. We're going to begin with the practice of creating sacred space. And this may be something you do regularly already without much thought. It may be something that doesn't make a lot of sense to you. So we're going to offer some guidance and just show you how we do it here. So those of you who picked up a care bag, you might be able to use some items from that as we engage in these rituals. And we'll prompt you as you go along to use a candle and matches, water, a stone glass. These and other items can be used to help you create sacred space. So we'll begin by kindling flames, lighting candles. If you have one near you, I invite you to do so as well, and to do so with intention. Take a moment to feel the weight of the match in your hand, to watch as the fire meets the wick, to note the change in the color and the warmth of the air around it. So after kindling the flames, lighting the candles, another practice is that of kind of washing away, cleansing the detritus of the day, letting go of that which does not need to be carried into this space. And there are many ways to do this, right? Some people use scents, some people use shaking and movement, even just wiping things off. For our purposes, we're going to do a hand washing. And if you have a care bag nearby, you've got a bottle of water in it if you didn't drink it already. But this is to remind us that, we became a lot more aware during COVID times of the importance of hand washing, and some of us so much so that it was perhaps doing damage to our skin. But a reminder that this is a practice of care. And so I invite you to use this as something that brings you into sensation of flesh on flesh, water on flesh. And if there's someone with you to do this, you might even consider offering to wash one another's hands. Would it be okay if I washed your hands,
Sure.
Mariela?
Thank you.
So I invite you to just consider that which you wish to release and let go.
May I wash yours?
Please. Thank you.
Now, Matthew, I grew up in Cuba where the Santeria priests used this Florida water. So this is a sacred scent, sacred form of water. It's not really water, it's alcohol. But this is what I grew up with, and this is what we did. And we will wash ourselves with this delicious scent, delightful scent, kind of similar idea. And there's also rose water, which to me, it just brings me home. It calms me down. It reminds me of who I am. There's something about rose water that is sacred for me. So that's two other options for you.
And folks around Fountain Street have remarked to me before that, Matthew, you have a scent. And it used to be patchouli all the time, only patchouli. But I also use a blend of oils that for me are really grounding. The scent of lavender, it's mixed with some coconut oil, some sandalwood, some mint. And so it's really a helpful thing that I apply every day. Sometimes multiple times a day, to just help me come back to center. So, yeah.
I find that interesting. Because the theme of the week, in a way, is home. We're thinking about the practices that brings us home. So the scents that makes us home. And when we think about home as a place where we can be ourselves, or as or home as within ourselves, as the place where we are ourselves. So to have a scent that is us, to have a scent that reminds you of who you are. So it's fascinating. I didn't know that about you. And so sometimes some of the staff say, is Matthew here? Because I thought I smelled him. And I was like, so even your scent is known even within the staff. So that's interesting, right? To have a scent that is you, that is just you. That's interesting.
And, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, do we put these things in our altar? So part of home, sometimes it helps to create an altar, things that remind us of the sacred, things that ground us. So we started putting those there.
And so that actually takes us into, so this is, I'm reminded that in some ways, what this does is it takes the ordinary and infuses it with the sacred, right? It's taking candles, smells, cloths, sound, water. It's acknowledging the incredible infusion of the divine in everything that is. And it's not really changing them. I remember a dear colleague of mine taught me once about how prayer doesn't change the world, it changes us. And similarly, that changes my attitude, my posture towards the world around me. And so too does doing something like this, like we're beginning to create an altar, which again, may be something you do already, or if not, it might be something you're like, what, an altar? It's just something as simple as this, finding a space, and that's something that makes home for me. I never feel like I'm home until I have an altar space. So wherever I move, there's always a little nook somewhere that's where I can pause, focus, and have these things that are important to me. And I know in the character school in the past, we made these little portable shrines or altars out of Altoids boxes that the children in the character school used to decorate. And a reminder like, you can just carry these with you.
So is creating an altar something that you've always done, or this kind of ritual is something that you grew up with?
I didn't grow up with it. I think when I entered into Unitarian Universalism in my 30s or 20s, and was the first time I ever met someone who told me that they were pagan, and I was, I'd been raised in a conservative Christian area, and so I was like, whoa, pagan. But then they just kind of just showed me around their house. They're like, yeah, see these candles, these things, these are my altars. And I was like, oh. And I realized, oh, that takes me to this place. And so then I started creating these. And one more person, which I was thinking of today, Elaine Faithful, wherever you are, this delightful soul at Unitarian Universalist Church of Lexington, Kentucky, taught me to build an altar for the worship service by putting cloths down and bringing pieces of nature in. And she said, it's good to have something to focus on. What about you? Did you grow up
Yeah, the
creating?
reason I was thinking about that, so for me it's just really interesting growing up in Cuba without religion in a way, although the Santeria, which is the Yoruba tradition that my African ancestors brought to the Caribbean, but that was more cultural. But I was the first generation born after the revolution and when religion was, so I didn't have access to a lot of this. So rituals and prayers is something that I have discovered through Unitarian Universalism, but even through my ministerial formation. My understanding of tonight would be a regular Wednesday night unless we make it so. So for me, rituals is a posture of grace, an invitation for the sacred to come in. It's a separation between the ordinary and the sacred. We light the candles, we take a posture of grace, we bring objects, we sing, we breathe. Again, that is what separates an ordinary moment from a sacred moment. And I'm very practical. So I'm preaching this Sunday about the dark night of the soul, about my dark night of the soul and what I found. And one of the many things I found is that rituals speak to a part of the brain, right? That words alone cannot. I'm very verbal. I love words and poetry and talking. Well, that's how I process, right?
Right.
And I was like, no, words don't do it. There are certain things that you need that posture of grace, that you need a scent, you need a candle, you need these rituals. So it's something that I have adopted over the last 5 years in a way. In some ways. In other ways, since I was a little girl, I have been playing with flower petals, creating beauty. Creating beauty, it's one of my practices, my whole life practices, right? And you create beauty in many ways. But it's something that I have adopted over the last 5 years or so.
Okay. So what else have you brought as symbols that take you home, that create home?
Brought my goodies with me. So let's begin with tea, because I'm thirsty. This is chocolate tea.
Chocolate tea?
Made of cocoa shells. Savoring is one of the practices. Just the savoring of this tea.
It smells like hot cocoa.
And it's tea. It has no sugar. The practice of savoring brings me home.
Yeah, you're talking about there are no words, right? I keep thinking, I want to, no, savor, slow down, savor.
Well, the thing about savoring is we are given, life evolution gave us 10,000 taste buds in our tongue alone for our savoring pleasure. We are wasting a lot of, if we do not really take the time to enjoy what we're given. 10,000 taste buds. I say, whoever created human beings must have loved us a lot to bless us in so many ways, but in this way, with the gift of savoring. 10,000 taste buds to savor and appreciate.
And I remember hearing once long ago that as we grow, our capacity to value and savor different kinds of tastes grows. So for example, I understand that bitterness is one of the last tastes that we learn to appreciate. And I think about when you give a child something that has a bitter flavor, a lot of times they'll spit it out. Some of us still do that. But it makes me think about life too, about how my capacity to appreciate the bittersweetness of life has continued to grow as I've grown, right? Yeah. What's that? What's that mean?
I'm like, get out of here. Like for real. Yes, that it's. I think the more loss you experience in life, the more, so there's a resistance to, particularly for me, a resistance to pain, a resistance to, and then at some point there's a stubbornness in me to to suffering at certain things, and then there is a, what is it? What am I trying to say? There is a release, an acceptance that you are like, oh, life is bittersweet. There is, and what comes after. So again, the dark night of the soul, right, is one of the most painful experiences of my life. The sweetness at the other side as well, right? To see what's at the other side, to see what we're made of. That's another one, right? So it's like, I don't want to go through that. It's really difficult. I'm much stronger, more resilient, more capable than I realized I was. And from there is born something. There's a bittersweetness to it. So it's our ability to, it's exactly what you're saying, right? There's a sermon in there somewhere.
And so I invite you, as you're watching this, to think about, what would you be placing, or are you placing on your altar at home? Again, if you received one of the care bags, we put these little stones in there, which are pretty small. But when we thought of these in these little mesh bags, it was with the idea that they reminded us of the gorgeous stained glass in this building, in this sanctuary. and all of the beauty in this building and the beauty in this community, the beauty of this religious community and the community that it's embedded in. So I'm going to place one of these stones here, but I know that Mariela has some others.
All the colors, all the colors. What Fountain Streeters don't understand is that I have been, how much I appreciate the beauty of this place. I have been speaking about beauty, the importance of beauty, what beauty does to our nervous system, how it's this. My whole ordination sermon was about beauty and colors. So I have all kinds of stones, colorful stones that I play with, and I create mandalas with them, and I always put them on my altar, in my office or in my home to connect me to the earth. Reminds me of the beauty and the abundance around us.
And you're reminding me, just as I carry a scent with me, I always carry some stones with me. So these two, one of them I purchased because it's from Peru, which some of you heard that I went to a men's retreat in Peru this past winter. And so I purchased this from Spirit Dreams. It has a connection to shamanic work and spiritual journeying. And then this other is another one that I found there, which is this, I don't know how well you can see. It's not an oval. What is that shape? There's a name for that. Anyway, it's like it's like an egghead with a spiral color in it, and it's connected to Kundalini energy, which is part of my practice as well. So I'll put those on here. And I have stones on my altar at home. These kind of stay on mine as a reminder of, again, what's important to me, the work of spiritual growth, transformation, and trusting in that which flows through me. Are there other things for our altar?
Yes. Flowers and colors, more colors, all the colors. I have, now your turn.
I think, I do have one more,
Yes,
that's right.
Yes.
So this is something that was put on my first altar and has been on or near my altar ever since. It's a piece of wood that I found, I don't know where, and it just leapt out at me because there are two pieces of my entry into Unitarian Universalism and liberal religion that this reminded me of. One is the Mary Oliver poem, Wild Geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to crawl on your knees through the desert 100 miles repenting. Simply let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. And then the other, so it kind of looks like, I think, a goose in flight, or maybe if you do this with the...
It's even the shape of the face. It's just, you can see it from there. It's incredible. Totally Mary Oliver's Wild Goose.
And the other piece is, there's a song that's in the hymnal that we use here that just, again, landed in my heart from the beginning of my entry into liberal religious community. It's called The Lone Wild Bird. And should I play it? Yeah. Flute was gifted to me by somebody in Ogden, Utah when I left my service in that congregation. So thanks to the trees and the woods.
delight is still with thee, nor leaves thy sight. And I am thine, I rest in thee. Great Spirit, come and rest in me. The ends of earth are in thy hand, the seas dark deep and far off land, and I am thine, I rest in thee. Great Spirit, come and rest in me.
So those pieces remind me of a sense of my place in the universe, of who I am and of whose I am. Thank you.
I'm in Asylum for our church bells. Enjoy. Your reference to wild geese and Mary Oliver, we were laughing. It's like two Unitarian Universalist ministers cannot not talk about Mary Oliver. Which reminded me about poetry and how it brings me home, how it centers me, how it reminds me of what truly matters in life. So again, yes, I love poetry. So I wanted to bring a poem. I wanted to bring a poem about love, because sometimes one of the easiest way for me to align with the sacred, which love is to feel love. And there was a Jesuit priest who put it beautifully, this practice. So his name was Pedro Arrupe, Spanish Jesuit priest, and the poem is called Falling in Love. So here it is. Nothing is more practical for finding God than falling in love. In a quite absolute and final way. What you are in love with, what seizes your imagination, will affect everything. It will decide what you will get out of bed in the morning, how you spend your weekends, what you do with your evenings, what you read, whom you know, what breaks your heart, and what amazes you with joy and gratitude. Fall in love, stay in love, and it will decide everything. Fall in love, stay in love, and it will decide everything. So this idea of falling in love, the practice of love, of feeling that love inside of here is a practice, right? So for me to be in alignment with love, with the sacred. So I brought this right here, which is a huge dandelion. I received this from the congregation where I did my internship in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. If any of you are watching, hi, I love you all. I love dandelions. Dandelions for me are a symbol of the resilience in life. I always tell this story of when I was working as a chaplain at a hospital after a traumatic death that I had to tend to. I went outside to breathe some fresh air, and I'm noticing this dandelion growing through a crack on the sidewalk. And a nurse who was smoking outside comes to me, and she sees my chaplain bag, and she's like, "Chaplain, what is your denomination?" And I say, I said, "I'm a Unitarian Universalist." And she says, "Are you a Christian?" And I'm saying, "No, I'm not." And she's like, "Then what do you believe in? What kind of minister are you?" And I said, you see that dandelion growing through a crack on the sidewalk. I believe in that life force, that resilient life force, that almost stubborn life force.
Yeah.
I mean, like, what are the chances of that dandelion growing through a crack on the sidewalk with such little soil, such little light down there, so much cement oppressing it? Yeah. So I said, I believe in that life force. It is the same life force that moves through me. And so I feel blessed by life. I feel loved by life. Another example that I was just writing about is that a few years ago, I took a class on finding edible foods in the field, wild foods. So by the end of that session, I had this huge bowl of mustard greens, dandelion greens, violets, wild onions, all kinds. I mean, it was really tasty. I made myself a salad just from it, and I was like, what generosity, what kindness. I didn't do anything to deserve this. I didn't do anything to work for this. Yeah. The earth feeds me, and I just felt. So there are so many instances in my life where I have felt loved by life. So for me, the practice is like, how do I love life back? Yeah. How do I love life back? How do I show life my appreciation and my love for it? And I think one of the easiest ways, so this is one final rock I brought today. When I went to the border, I walked through the desert, dropping off water for people crossing the border. And so I brought this rock from the desert to remind me of my work in serving life and loving life. All life is a reminder to do this work, the work I do. At the border with ICE detainees and their families. It is a way of loving life back. I feel I'm so blessed. Life blessed me with 10,000 taste buds. And, I say, there is so much beauty. There is so much beauty. I say, just the Milky Way at night and a moonlit field and dancing fireflies and singing whales, and there is so many blessings that I feel they are life's way of showing me it loves us. And so the practice of loving life back is very important by helping and loving others, but also by creating loving acts as well.
So I think what we're showing is that the act of creating sacred space is a first starting place for a practice that we need for these times. To set an intention, to prepare ourselves, and then to be reminded of what we're committed to, of what moves us, of what tells us who we are, what has brought us this far, and what guides us as we continue. So this is the first practice, creating space. creating space and remembering.
I want to say something else. Thank you. Thank you. So creating space, and one of the things I think about, right, so it's like, what is home for us? What brings us home, right? So creating something like this, but I'm thinking of one of my favorite poets and philosophers, John O'Donohue, which is so popular now. John O'Donohue said that for him, home, in the book Anamkara, he was saying that home is where you are understood, where you feel understood. And I remember the first time this happened to me. I have many ideas, and sometimes it's hard to articulate those ideas. Sometimes it's easier than others, but sometimes the early stages of an idea is hard for them to, so I was with a new friend, and she's driving, and I'm sitting in the passenger seat. And I'm working so hard to express this one thing. And she's like, oh yeah, I was like, totally. And I was like, oh, you understood me? And so I remember that moment of being fully understood, and it felt like home. And I'm just saying, perhaps home, I want to welcome that, that this idea of these times, isolation, to go home. Sometimes home is our place, and nobody else lives there, or our sacred space, but sometimes home is in connection, right?
Yes.
Sometimes home is where you are understood.
Yes.
And that's just beautiful. So my prayer is that you have at least a good friend to whom you can go to, where you feel understood.
And I'm going to move us to the return again. And with that, I also want to say, so this song that we're going to close with is one that you used in Tulsa, right, at All Souls regularly? Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Return again?
Yeah.
It's a long history.
Long history.
Yeah.
It comes to us from the Jewish tradition, Shlomo Carlebach, and I'll say this about that, also that for me, home, Judaism is one of my homes. It's part of my heritage. So home is where I hang a mezuzah, which there's now one outside my office door upstairs. But when you were just talking about being understood, I was reminded that one of the really important practices that I carry with me everywhere I go is there's a dear friend who I have a weekly prayer call with, and we have for 14 years. We graduated seminary together and discovered that we both needed to pray for and with each other. And so now, wherever I go, wherever we go, we do that. And so the home of my soul is also in that conversation with somebody who sees me, who challenges me, who accepts me, and who loves me. So I add those prayers for you as well, that you would find that and be carried by that in your life. May this song be a blessing to you.
Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are born and reborn again. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are born and reborn again. Return again, turn